All right. So, Taibbi is not the only one who worked on the Twitter files, but I guess he was the most visible one. They have had quite a hard on for him for a long time. So this was Stacey Plaskett when they did Jim Jordan convened a hearing about government censorship. This is really where they started going after him hard. Plaskett, by the way, worth noting, was Jeffrey Epstein's congresswoman for his little island getaway, solicited him for campaign funds. So this is what she said when Taibbi first appeared before them.
For his work. This isn't just a matter of what data was given to these so-called journalists before us now. There are many legitimate questions about where Musk got the financing to buy Twitter. We know for a fact that foreign countries like Qatar.
All right, so Taibbi did not let that so-called journalist thing pass.
Taibbi, I've been a reporter for 30 years and a staunch advocate of the First Amendment. Much of that time was spent at Rolling Stone magazine. Ranking Member Plaskett, I'm not a so-called journalist. I've won the National Magazine Award, the I.F. Stone Award for Independent Journalism, and I've written 10 books, including 4 New York Times bestsellers. I'm now the editor of the online magazine Racket on the independent platform Substack.
All right. Now, I'm not sure if it was right after this congressional testimony or if it was another one. He appeared before them more than once. But the IRS literally went to Matt Taibbi's house after he testified, after one of his testimonies, which Jim Jordan went to his credit and investigated, forcing the IRS to change their policy of unannounced visits. But that's an example where people want to talk about, hey, Trump is creating a fascist country. I mean, to the extent that he is, and I think in many ways he is, the Democrats opened the door to this. This is under Joe Biden, that the IRS went to the house of a journalist after he testified on behalf of their political enemies, or that's how they perceived it. So Mehdi Hasan, in the way in his way, did a kind of ambush interview where he took some minor discrepancies of acronyms in the Twitter files and blew this up as Matt Taibbi perjuring himself, which AOC, who people are now trying to build up as the great left-wing hope, jumped right on. This also implicates House Republicans as well, who launched an entire oversight hearing and investigation based on these errors. Did GOP oversight not fact check or double verify any of these claims or read the reports cited before wasting tons of public time and dollars on it? Now, again, as I recall, because Matt wrote a whole article about it, it was literally he got one letter wrong in one of these acronyms. That's what this was all about. But the essence, the underlying reporting, they weren't able to poke any holes in. I mean, they claim to, but they can't back it up. They took it even further. Plaskett sent a letter to him threatening him with jail time for perjury. But they're not done. They're not done. Showing that the Democrats learned absolutely nothing about their own repulsiveness from the fact that they lost again to a game show host, a rather repulsive one, somebody most of the country doesn't even like. Ranking member Hamlager Dove, who knew? I've never heard of this woman before.
Yeah,
we cover politics.
Yeah.
I figure she was trying to make a name for herself here because she doesn't have one. Calls GOP witness
No
Matt
one's ever heard of her.
Taibbi. Nobody's ever heard. Everybody's saying, "Who is that?
Who is that?
Who is that?" Calls GOP witness Matt Taibbi a serial sexual harasser and enters articles into the congressional record about his history as a sex pest. This is Aaron Rupar covering this uncritically, not questioning the claim, backing it up. So let's see what she said.
relitigating a made-up conspiracy theory about a part of the State Department that no longer exists to distract from the dumpster fire foreign policy this administration is pursuing, and elevating a serial sexual harasser as their star witness in the process. Mr. Chair, I request unanimous consent to enter into the record 2 articles about the Republican witness Matt Taibbi. The first is a Chicago Reader article entitled 20 Years Ago in Moscow, Matt Taibbi was a misogynist a-hole and possibly worse, and a Washington Post article titled The 2 Expat Bros Who Terrorized Women Correspondents in Moscow. Without objection. This hearing could not be more out of...
Okay, so she actually responded to Aaron Rupar's tweet of this, saying, after this, Republicans gave Matt Taibbi time to defend himself. It's telling that he didn't. Well, you know what's more telling? That you were stupid enough to put that in writing. As Matt explains, there is not much a person can say to a member of Congress hiding behind the speech and debate clause of the Constitution. I can, however, respond to a member arrogant enough to repeat defamatory claims on social media. See below for the $10 million libel lawsuit filed today. Hear, hear, Matt. Congratulations. It's about time. So I don't know this account, but Petunis World did a pretty good job of breaking it down. So thank you very much for that. So here's a little bit about what the lawsuit is. On April 3rd, 2025, journalist Matt Taibbi filed a $10 million federal lawsuit against Representative Sidney Comliger Dove, Democrat, California, ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on South and Central Asia, for slander and libel. Taibbi's suit stems from Comliger Dove's April 1st statement during a censorship hearing where she called him a serial sexual harasser and entered 2 articles into the congressional record, a Chicago Reader piece and a Washington Post article alleging his history as a sex pest. The articles reference Taibbi's time at the Exile, a Moscow-based newspaper he co-edited in the late 1990s. A 2000 book, The Exile, Sex, Drugs, and Libel in the New Russia, co-authored with Mark Ames, contains satirical passages about sexual harassment that Taibbi says were fictional. He's denied any misconduct, and no woman has ever formally accused him of harassment. Taibbi apologized in 2017 for the cruel and misogynistic language, but insists the claims are baseless. Now, remember, at this time when they were really trying to destroy his career, he was still trying to play nice with the libs. I'm sure he would not apologize today for what was clearly a satiric book. If you remember the witch hunt atmosphere at that time, I'm sure it was pretty scary. He was still employed at Rolling Stone back then.
No, nowadays he'd get canceled if he apologized.
Yeah, exactly. But this is how scummy this attack is. Like, this was debunked quite a while ago. And to make matters worse, this whole accusation came about because a right-wing influencer had a grudge against him for making fun of him in that magazine.
Right.
Quote, I was never harassed by Matt Taibbi, nor did I see him sexually harass anyone at work or outside work either. There were 2 Mashas. So the other Masha told Paste in a phone interview. It was a ridiculous passage written by Mark. Taibbi didn't even write any of the offending passages. She and Taibbi, whom she described as naturally shy, would end up dating for 7 years, a relationship she recalls fondly despite a bad breakup. These claims that Matt would do this stuff are ridiculous, she said. I left the Exile because we started dating, and Matt was worried about impropriety. He didn't even ask me out at work. Matt is a fundamentally decent and kind person. The woman referred to as Sveta, whose last name has also been omitted for professional reasons, also told Paste that the encounter described in Ames's passage never happened, and that neither Taibbi nor Ames ever acted inappropriately towards her or any other woman in the office. It never happened, she wrote over email. When asked if the two editors ever ignored impropriety by other male staffers, she told us there was nothing to ignore. In other words, the Exile's work environment was not hostile for women. So that's about as clear a debunking as you could get. They literally called the women who worked in the office in Russia, and they all said, no, that's absolutely ridiculous. Now, Paste was able to trace the effort to cast Exile as a factual memoir back to an alt-right author named Jim Goad in 2011. Goad, whose magazine, Answer Me, had been parodied by the Exile, began tweeting about the Natasha passages and tagging the outlets that hosted Ames' work or had him on as a contributor. Now, this whole thing really got ignored until Taibbi's book, I Can't Breathe, about the murder of Eric Garner was about to come out. And again, this was the height of Me Too. So all of the liberal outlets picked up on it as a kind of Me Too feeding frenzy without actually investigating it. Obviously, the right-wing outlets with that book coming out had their own motives. So this is Taibbi explaining what the book is. And now, actually, I've never read it. I'm kind of curious now. The paper was to be a mirror of the typical expatriate in exile who was a pig of the highest order, Taibbi explained. He was usually a Western consultant who made big bucks teaching Russians how to fire workers or privatize markets in the name of progress, then at night banged hookers and blew coke and speed. The reality is most of the Westerners in town were there to turn Russia into a neoliberal puppet state by day and get laid and shit-faced by night. So the paper was a kind of sarcastically over-enthusiastic celebration of this monstrous community's values. So in other words, it was basically an exercise in gonzo journalism, right? It was mixing some factual events with doing it from the point of view of this horrible American expatriate community that he describes in that way. The claims that this book were true have been retracted in several outlets, including The Guardian wrote an article attacking Taibbi for it, and then printed this upon further investigation. This article was amended on 10th April 2018 to remove a reference to Matt Taibbi in a book he co-authored. In October 2017, Grove Publishing added clarification about the book, saying, quote, this book combined exaggerated, inventive satire and nonfiction reporting. At the time, several reviews indicated that the book was satire. The women referred to in the passage have since said in an interview that they have never been harassed by Taibbi, something that the Democrats certainly knew before they tried to resurface this in this hearing. So here's Greenwald weighing in. You're a pathetic smear artist exploiting Me Too as if you give a shit about it. Can't wait until you cheer Andrew Cuomo's candidacy the way Dems cheer Biden and Bill Clinton. You spread a discredited and retracted story, and now you're getting justifiably sued. You are a damn, this is Pod for Truth, Justice, and Survival for All. You are a damn good reason why the so-called Democratic Party should be buried next to the Whig Party. If you believe what you said about Taibbi, you're a moron. And if you didn't, you are a liar. Either way, I hope he sues the crap out of you. Your wish is granted, sir. Now, hey, we don't really take shots at these guys these days. It's like kicking a drugged up monkey. But this happened to come up in my research, and I just have to include this. So this is a passage here from the book that we now know was written by Mark Ames and was well established all the way back in 2017, 8 years ago, that this was satirical fiction. The Vanguard nonetheless tweets it saying, Matt Taibbi, in his own words, as he sues a woman for calling him a serial sexual harasser. If these guys were not as dumb as they are, I would say they're being paid but they're definitely dumb enough to come up with that take on their own, which one does not preclude the other. They may still be getting paid.
I don't think so. I think they're eating out on Cenk Uyghur's lost subscriptions now. I think that provides them enough of a cushion. Yeah, I would say that. I'll give them that. I think it's organic in that respect. But yeah, man, I mean, they just cannot. I mean, this goes back to the hands-off march. They just cannot help but reveal what snakes they are every opportunity they get. And to put that in, to take that swipe that you're a serial sex pest or sex harasser,
which
whatever
they
she called them.
certainly know has been disproved. They certainly know that.
No, but they get points. They score brownie points with each other when they talk like that. It's all signaling. It's like a horse baying, the way you used to describe it. You know, when you behave in a certain way, when you say certain words, you signal to the rest of the crowd that you're in the crowd. And that's all that is. And, you know, it makes sense that a person who very few people even very involved in the political space have never heard of would say something like that, because that's the kind of shot
and it was
you
the
take
same
to
thing
make
with
a name
Plaskett.
for yourself. Plaskett too.
Nobody ever heard of her until that.
Exactly. So you try to create these big moments in order to make a name for yourself. And in this case, you're just rehashing what was, I think, a pretty absurd story when it came out. I mean, it was always an absurd story. Now it's even more absurd. Now it's almost 10 fucking years later.
Right. And you're entering these debunked
repeatedly.
articles into the record. These people are the scum of the earth. And this is why I say the best thing the Democrats could do is just run as generic Democrats and hide until after the election. Don't say anything, because they are so fucking repulsive. They make the Trump people look good by comparison. That is the whole secret of why they swept the House and the Senate, because look at the alternative. It's these people. It's these disgusting, lying hall monitor creeps.
Right.
Good for Matt. I'm glad he's doing this. You know, the Van Boys are lucky he's not what they claim he is, because they're opening themselves up for a lawsuit. But I know Matt is way too decent to sue Beavis and Butthead for their excesses. But this Congresswoman, yeah, man, I think he'll win. I think he'll win. I mean, that's clearly liable. You're making a claim that has long been debunked with no factual basis for making the claim. Good for him, man. And I hope this puts the fear of God into some of the rest of them that have been doing this to witnesses. It doesn't matter whether you don't like the witnesses. That is the kind of abuse of power that allowed Trump, criminal abuser of power that he is, to present himself as an alternative who would restore freedom.
Yeah, and this is kind of a decade in the making for Matt Taibbi. I mean, we've had the pleasure of talking to him a few times. He's a very nice person who probably has thought about doing something like this in the past, but just didn't do it, just out of decency. But you know, you push someone to a point. At a certain point, you have to lay it down. And yeah, I mean, look, that's the only power we have over people like this. Like you have to use the courts to go after them if they wrong you in that way, because otherwise they're just completely untouchable. And you can't just let the government make shit up about you. That's how you end up in El Salvador. You know? Yeah. I mean,
yes, you want to see the arrogance. Now, this could be a lawyer said, don't take it down because you'll look guilty. That was still up as of this afternoon when I was working on the piece. She had not taken that down.
Right. Yep. So we'll see how that works out. But yeah, good for him. Go get him.
Yep. Good luck, Matt.
Good luck. You know, if you win, you know, you could give us like 2.5%.
Give us a little
escarole, like 2.5 is fine.
Kick back to your friends that do dissidents over here.
You know, we gave you some good press.
I got
your
book back here. Yeah, after I've sold at least 6 books by now.
We advertised the book. You know,
give us a little cut,
couple points. You know, it's all right. Don't worry about it. You know, 2.5 is fine. It doesn't have to be more.
2.5 points.
2.5 points is fine.
A little taste.
Yeah,
we just want to wet our beaks.
Exactly. Yeah.
Please clap.